Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Raymond Kemp. He is the Commissioner for American Battle Monuments Commission, and he is the CEO of Kemp Solutions LLC. He's an ex as a Navy veteran, so we'll be talking about long career in the Navy, 33 years with the U.S. Navy. Welcome to the show, Raymond.
Pleasure to be here with you, AJ. How are you?
I'm very good. Pleasure to have you on the show, Raymond. And I'm sure not just you are welcome to the show, you are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about leadership, we'll be talking about success, and who better than to talk to you about these things you have been, into from fleet master chief to inspirational leader, and that you have developed, in the Navy as well as in the private sector. So I want to understand first a bit more about you, Raymond, for the audience. Who is Raymond Kemp? Is he an entrepreneur? Is he a patriot? Is he a soldier? Help us understand a bit about yourself, Raymond.
All those things. At a very young age, I chose to join the United States Navy as an expression of patriotism, and that was very common in my family lineage. All the men in my family had served in the military, so it was very natural for me to take that path. After serving, as you mentioned, over 3 decades and excelling to the highest rank in the enlisted force, I had the opportunity to transition out of the Navy and become an entrepreneur. And in that entrepreneur life that I have had the opportunity to dwell in for the last 4 years, it has been almost as exciting as being in the Navy.
Wonderful. It's a nice thing, that you have built up such a great life for yourself. There has been a lot of struggle around it, I'm sure about that. So we'll be talking about that, a lot of learning about that. But first, to understand about being the commissioner for American Battle Monuments Commission, I want to understand what exactly is this. And you have been directly appointed by none other than President Biden. So help us understand what this is all about. And
Sure.
Why does the president have to appoint it? It shows the importance of what you are doing. So help us understand, especially people outside the US will find it very interesting to understand this.
Sure, it's my pleasure. So if we think back to the early 1900s and World War I, we had a very different technical capacity than we have right now. Same as in World War II. And so in that era, when there was a battle, or in this case, a war on foreign soil, oftentimes all countries from India to Australia to certainly in Europe, and also in Africa, when there was a battle, the soldiers were often buried where they fell. And so after a number of years, exactly 100 years ago for the United States, we developed something called the American Battle Monuments Commission. And our responsibility is to ensure that time does not dim the glory of the deeds of those soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen who fought and fell on foreign soil. And so we have agreements with several different nations where we have American cemeteries on foreign land. So, for example, I had the opportunity to speak in Tunisia, which is in North Africa, in Florence, Italy. Also, just a few months ago, I was in the Philippines at American cemeteries where Americans are buried on those foreign lands. This commission it was started by the War Department. It's overseen by the executive, branch of the United States government. Therefore, it's the president himself who appoints the commissioners. And so I've had the opportunity to be in this position since President Biden took office.
Wonderful, Raymond. So now let me understand a bit about leadership first. There has been a saying, that leaders are not born. Leadership can be made. Then people say leaders are born. You know, again, people have their own views.
Right.
And a lot of people say, everyone can be a leader at any. You don't need that designation to be a leader. What is your understanding of about who is a leader, especially in today's time? Born leader, not born leader, learned leader.
Sure.
Leadership thrust on them. I want to understand both from being you are as a CEO of Kemp Solutions, so
Right.
that's a private sector, if I understand, and then being in the army from fleet master chief to serving the in navy in for the next 33 years. I want to understand about that.
Sure. Yes. So I'm from a town in the state of Oklahoma here in the United States. And some of my friends were taught to swim by being tossed in the water. And it was practically a custom because there's a creek not too far from where I grew up, and that's where people learned to swim. And some people hit the water and came up and in the urgency of surviving, learned to what we call doggy paddle. And they would be beating the water until they were able to keep their head above. And usually when they can breathe, their body would naturally calm down, figure out, their mind would figure out, okay, if I push down against this water, I can stay above. And that was the beginning of learning to swim. Now, some people got tossed in that water and someone else had to jump in and save them because they just did not have that capability. And I think leadership is very similar. There are some people who are born with a natural measure of charisma, a natural measure of being able to communicate with clarity to people. And then there are others that are not necessarily equipped with the same thing. And so I believe that there are some leaders that are born with that ability. And then there are many, many others who are able to learn that very same skill. And I believe it's very simple. When you have the ability to express care for another person, then that creates, a relevant relationship with them. When that relevant relationship is created, they become vulnerable, allow themselves to be influenced by your thoughts, your actions, and your words. And therefore, leadership begins at that point. From my experience, I had the opportunity. I was one of those folks who at a very young age was, the captain of a football team, basketball, sports teams I played on. I joined the Navy, and within 4 days of my joining the Navy in the boot camp environment, the basic training, they asked all of us, and there was maybe 170 or so people in my group. They said, "Who wants to be a squad leader?" I put my hand in the air. I want to do it. I know I can. I've done it before. And the guy sitting next to me said, "Why are you raising your hand? Don't you know the Navy means never again volunteer yourself?" Well, I didn't know that. My lifestyle had been lead the way and defend those people who may not be as comfortable and strong in pressure situations. And so thankfully, making my way into that environment worked out because that had been my previous experience. Now, in my career, again, as you mentioned, over 3 decades, there were many times where I was in charge of leaders and leader development. And I discovered there, very acutely discovered there, that some people just don't have that natural ability. But if I can teach them to have what I call the ABCs of leadership, and I talk about this in my book, if I can teach them the ABCs of leadership, that if you have the right attitude, that's something you have total control of and it's free. If you have the right attitude, that's going to determine your altitude. And so with a good attitude, you can rise above those challenges. With a good attitude, you can rise above those things that may not necessarily be so pleasant. With that right attitude, and certainly equipped with competency, then you can make it to the next level. The B in the ABCs, the B is belief. I was taught at a very young age, if you believe, you can achieve. Now, it's not just believing, it's belief, then action. But you keep it in line with the ABCs. The B is to believe. And then the C is character. And so when someone is leading with the good attitude a high level of belief and understanding and competency that goes with the task. And they're doing it with character, meaning that they show up the same way and a very predictable way that creates an environment for leadership for others to follow. And you can learn those things. And so my pleasure is to have been offered the opportunity to teach that to a high number of people throughout my naval career, and making people better than me is a joy to do.
Right, right. Now let's understand about, people talk about leadership and designation. Many a times people in positions of power, they say everyone can be a leader. And people who are not in power, they say it is the people in power who have got the designation to lead us and to perform.
Sure.
Sometimes, do you think a lot of people, especially, in different aspects of people who hold power, especially political power, they say anyone can be leader? Is it about shirking responsibility that they are saying, listen, if I fail, then you've also got to be a part of that failure? Okay.
Oh, that's a great perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great perspective.
Yes,
Everyone can
because a
lead.
leader's
Anyone
job is
can be a
to
leader.
a leader's job is to lead from the front. And people who do not have the power, do not have the resources within, you are telling them that, listen, you got to be a leader, whereas they don't have any sort of power or position to be. That
Right.
leadership on the ground is different.
Right.
It is, that is as a citizen, your responsibility is different. So especially in political power, you see when leaders fail, they say we have to do it together. But when they succeed, I did it.
Right.
It happens in many other aspects of life. So I want to understand that, is it about inclusiveness, or is it about not having character and actually getting ready, everyone ready for the blame, that you be a part of this whole success? As I say, a failure is an orphan and success has many takers. So help us understand leadership in this part. Again, to add to it, in army or any other aspect, we talk about racism. Now,
Right.
if leaders were really full of character, then this thing would not exist, but there is still not equality in the world. I want to understand, then where is that leadership? Help us understand, amidst all these so many questions about leadership, the right kind of leadership from
Right.
your perspective, Raymond.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. So let me start with it's crucial that we understand that it should be a we, not me environment. And when you find a leader with a high level of character, that is normally how she or how he may behave. They'll behave in such a way with their hands over the shoulders of those with whom they lead. And when there is a problem, particularly one that the leader knows is coming, there is an issue, and whether it be a verbal attack or a group of people that are pressing against them, or maybe it's even a technical issue within their company, that leader is willing to take that step forward and take the brunt of that challenge, particularly again, if it's, as I mentioned, technical, if it's an administrative thing, mechanical issue, personnel, that leader, that is the time when the leader should be in the front. From my perspective, it's important to be able to lead not just from the front where everyone can see and hear you, not just from the front when the microphone is thrust into your face and you're being lauded because the company or the team has created an environment. It's also important to lead in the middle, to step into the roles and responsibilities of those mid-level and maybe even frontline leaders sometimes, so that people understand that you understand the organization and that you're involved within it. It's also important to be able to lead from the rear, to be able to let your people run and go forward. And what I mean by that is that a way to create innovation within an organization is to recognize those people who are closest to the problem. because they very likely have the answer to the problem. And when we celebrate their answer, that creates that space I mentioned in the beginning. It's we, not me. And that type of leadership is what draws people towards that organization and the mission. It also draws people not just to the person, but to the team. Because when we understand that if you do well, I do well, and that if there is a great opportunity for you, that doesn't mean bad for me. So what they say where I'm from is what's good for you doesn't mean bad for me, and what's good for me doesn't mean bad for you. But when we have the right mindset, when we have the right measure of loyalty, then we can come up. There's another saying that the rising tide floats all boats. Well, we should all be the tide. And so not only are we creating that environment where everyone is elevated, we're creating an environment where everyone's voice matters, and that we are innovative when it comes down to looking towards the future and creating something great. It's my perspective and observation that great companies, organizations, and countries do four things really well. They see, solve, share, and provide feedback. They see an issue, a problem, or a concern. They come up with a solution for that. They share that amongst their team and others, expanding beyond their team. And then they provide feedback as they continue to create and build resolution for issues. And that's the thing about being resilient. To be resilient is to operate in those four lanes, apply that attitude, belief, and character I talked about before. And then, some of those, politicians, just imagine if politicians around the world were honest and forthright, and they had that we, not me, altruistic desire, for their constituency. The world would be just a greatly better place. Regrettably, there are some people that are just not as well equipped as others to be honest and forthright. There's selfish people in the world, and therefore we have to oftentimes be successful in spite of them. And that comes from within. So to your point about everyone can be a leader, the truth of the matter is we can lead ourselves. That is our reaction to challenges and successes. We can lead within our household. I listened to one of your guests the other day you interviewed, and she was talking about leadership, from the mother's perspective. And she was celebrating how mothers are, these, diverse and agile leaders. I might take a point with that, but the fact of the matter is we can lead within our households. And we can also lead in companies and organizations, and certainly within governmental agencies. And so it's true that we are all leaders in one capacity or another. The great leaders are the ones who let people understand their power. And so in the United States, we're preparing for a presidential election. I think the most honorable politicians are saying, go out, cast a vote. We will honestly and ethically count those votes, and they will matter when it comes down to the election of our next United States president. Those less than honorable leaders are the ones who are looking to subdue the voting rights of other people. And that regrettably will continue to be a challenge until we make our way to that place where our minds are guided towards being more inclusive.
Right, Raymond. So let me understand another issue. America has had, and many other countries, especially US, has had great leaders, either in terms of political leadership, civilian leadership, even, armed forces leadership, and they have performed at different. But one thing that has always been prevalent in all spheres of life is racism. Why is it that, in spite of so much of great leadership in the past as well as in the present, talking about it, being it, is the time of equality, why is it that this thing is still only getting debated and getting aggravated, but it's not getting solved? Where is the leadership in this? Who is going to take care of this leadership? I'm sure You must have seen it in your own way, the way in your Navy career, outside, and even today. Especially, today, this time, if I understand, February is the Black History Month. Correct me if I'm wrong on this.
True.
But
True.
so, is it a time to look at these things and actually right kind of leaders come out and take care of this sort of a issue, which should take everyone forward, humanity forward, because this is not a great thing to exist in today's time. Help us understand leadership versus this sort of issue even existing in today's time.
Sure. Yeah, and it's become very popular to say we need to be more diverse, we need to be more equitable, and we need to be more inclusive. The language has changed. I was born in the '60s, raised in the '70s, which means that in my youth, there were people who were still relatively young who had marched with one of America's greatest leaders. Martin Luther King Jr. There was a high level of leadership that was, spreading, across the United States and creating that environment that we should be united rather than divided by race. And into my career, and you're very right to presume that as I entered into the Navy, I faced a high level of discrimination, very overt, very openly discriminative against Black people. And so as my career progressed, and even though I retired as, one of the top 3 out of 330,000, there was still a much less overt, more covert discrimination that still continued to happen. Regrettably, I believe that solving the racial issue around the world is very similar to seeking world peace. I mean, as long as there are people out there who are selfishly seeking to enrich and uplift themselves, that's a darn challenge that we have been making our way through since the very beginning of time that's been recorded. When it comes down to racism, regrettably, in the United States, we have tried many different ways. We've changed the name from equal opportunity to the diversity, equity, inclusion movement. We have gone about it by creating a month like this month in February, the United States Black History Month. Was started to celebrate the accomplishments of Black people so that others would be able to see not only are these folks brilliant, but they are the same as we are, to create that measure of sameness, that same United States that we talk about should extend down towards the people. However, there are still those who are able to gain a measure of momentum, notoriety, and support from the people who are juxtaposed to that thought of equality. So again, I think solving the racism, the racial discrimination issue is likened to solving world peace. It seems very easy to intellectualize. Here's the value of an egalitarian society. Here's the value of all of us very altruistically making our way. Here's the value added to everyone. And there are some people who are still just very selfish about that. So Black History Month is a month where I choose to celebrate. And oftentimes I go and speak. In fact, I'll be speaking later on this month about the value of Black History Month being, let's consider it like this. If those people can overcome the challenges that they had and still be highly contributive to the world and to our nation, even down to cities and societies and the neighborhoods within we live, surely we, who are no longer being faced by the dogs that were sent to attack those people in the South during the water hose, the fire hoses that were put on women and children, in our past, we don't have to endure that level of physical attack. So surely we can stand and be bold and courageous in our efforts to treat everyone with dignity and respect.
Right, right. Well put, Raymond. Now, there is much to learn from you, Raymond, and I'm sure people can learn a lot from your book, Building Resilience for Hybrid Success Anchored in adaptability. Tell us a bit about this. Who is this book for? What have you written in that book?
Sure. So, and I thank you for bringing that up. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who is in leadership, still in the Navy. And I said to him, what an amazing time to be in leadership. And he said, oh, these young people are so different than before. You wouldn't even understand. You have to tell them over and over again. They're always asking why, so on and so forth. And I thought to myself, come on, man, it's not that hard. And it started in a conversation. It went from that conversation to me sending a text message to finish up, a thought that I had, and the text just kept growing, turned into an email. And I thought, perhaps I should go ahead and write a book and share a perspective on how to build and strengthen resilience and loyalty within an organization. And so many of us have faced in life challenges that came upon us, in this instance, a leadership challenge. The thing is, particularly when it comes to returning to the office. So around the world during the COVID pandemic, many people began to work from home. Now that the pandemic has subsided, what we're facing is challenges getting people back into the workplace. And the book is written from the perspective of, here's how we lead, whether someone is in the office or in that hybrid environment where they are working from home most of the time and in the office sometime, and various different versions of that. The thing about leadership is that even in this hybrid environment, the thing about leadership is not being able to endure, from my perspective, not being able to just endure the storm, but it's about the ability to dance in the rain. And so when a storm comes and it's raining heavily, standing, whether with an umbrella or not, in that rain, that might be an expression of grit. But for that rain to come and still to be able to dance and find creativity in the midst of the storm, that is what resilience is really about. And so my hope is that whether it's a senior executive, CEO in a large company, a large and diverse company, or even a small CEO or leader or a frontline leader with a small organization that's not diverse, I think all of us can learn from reading this book how to impact hearts and minds in such a way where it will build resilience and loyalty within those organizations, and we can become better people, one at a time, impact and influencing hearts and minds by our behavior.
Wonderful, wonderful. There is much to, people learn from you. As I said, there is much to get done from you in professionally. So for those people who would want to know more about you and engage with you professionally through your Kemp solutions, so help us understand what's the best way for them to connect with you.
Sure. The best way to connect with me would be via LinkedIn, and you can find me if you just put Raymond Kemp into the search engine on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm also on social media at Raymond D. Kemp, and my website is kemp-solutions.com. That's kemp-solutions.com. And I just want to ensure your listeners, look, if they reach out to me, the first thing I'm going to do is talk and teach them about the ABCs. And very soon after that, we're going to have a conversation where they will be inspired by just 10 two-letter words. 10 two-letter words, AJ, that will have an impact on the type of person that they are, and certainly being better leaders. And those 10 words are, if it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me takes away, some request, some handout, but it puts the onus right back on them for them to build, grow, and be strong and create that we, not me environment. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you for allowing me to offer those things to your listeners. And of course, the book, Building Resilience for Hybrid Success, anchored in adaptability.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Nice talking to you. With this, it's a wrap. It's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Pleasure.